sign up. I may also have to sign off a little bit early as well. I did my best to rearrange to at least attend for part of this, but I may have to go, but I'm going to do my best to stick around.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting us know. We'll follow up with the two of you then.
Okay, so I saw that it's now being live streamed, Tom. We're all set?
Yes, we are.
All right. Well, again, thank you, everybody, for this. This will be a little bit of a background meeting, and then hopefully progress from here to some specific work for those that will be able to participate in that. Just to alert everybody, this is actually being live streamed. It is a public meeting, as all village committee meetings have to be, and it's being taped. And if people are really interested, I'd be surprised, but if people are really interested, they could watch this meeting. Is that right, Tom?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and so in that sense, it's a public meeting, and if they have comments, they're going to be emailing them to Sandra or me, and we'll try to follow up with them. But so just wanted everybody to be aware of that. So with that, I will introduce Chris Hopkins. She is the consultant with CT Consultants that is going to lead our overall comprehensive plan effort and help on this subcommittee. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks very much, Chip. So just a little bit of background first on who I am. My name again, Chris Hopkins. I am an FAICP certified planner. I've been working in the field for well over 30 years. And this is primarily my bread and butter. This working with local communities, doing comprehensive plan updates or complete brand new ones. And working with groups of people like this committee and Gates Mills, the larger advisory committee, etc. I also do a lot of work related to zoning because much of what, let's say land development regulations, or land preservation regulations or stormwater management or things like that. But things that have to do with community. Because often what we develop from a comprehensive planning policy and goals standpoint is implemented by land development, land preservation regulations. So I have a lot of experience doing that as well. I have lived in Northeastern Ohio and worked as a professional planner since the late 1980s and have worked with, I just tallied them up for a different reason, but I've worked with over 125 communities throughout Ohio and doing planning, zoning. I've done a little bit of work with private developers or property owners who are trying to figure out how to get something approved or challenging regulations and policies at the local level. So I've got, but that's like 15% of my background. Anyways, with that, and then I've also worked, so some of you I know have been around a long time like me and know my mentor, David Hart. So the reason I moved to Cleveland in the first place was to work with David Hart, who had a planning consulting firm that's a long time, well respected throughout all of Ohio. Then in around 2004, I took a job with the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission and worked with communities just within Cuyahoga County. And about 7 years ago, when David Hart, his company was purchased by CT Consultants, he called me and asked me to join him at CT, and I did that and had the chance once again to work with my mentor. So that's a little bit of my background. The other things I wanted to cover quickly before we get into the meat of this meeting is to just go over the things, why we're having this meeting in the first place. So when CT first submitted our proposal to Gates Mills, to assist in the update of a comprehensive plan, we gave our typical spiel about how we go about updating and preparing a plan. And throughout the discussion with Chip and the mayor and Sandra, and the others on the selection committee, we brainstormed about ways to engage more people in the village than what I typically do from a 20 to 25 member advisory committee. And so through these ideas that the village came up with, there are these 3 teams that are supplementing the work of the advisory committee, which is really exciting. So we are learning as we go along, because this is really an experiment in doing a planning process. And so that's very exciting, and you'll learn more about that in a minute. So the goal of today's meeting is to really flesh out what this outside perspectives team, that this group that you make up, what you are going to be doing and why it's important, and how you really add value to the comprehensive planning process. And just to underscore the overall goal of the Gatesville's comprehensive plan, which is on the agenda, but I'll go ahead and read it because I think it's really insightful, and it's enhancing the appeal of the village and the value of the land and property throughout the village while retaining and enhancing, not if, but enhancing the unique historic character and quality of services in the village. So with that, then I'll turn it over to Chip and Sandra.
Okay, well, thank you, Chris, and good evening, everyone. Some of you I know, some of you I don't. My name is Sandra Turner, and we're very happy to be working with Chris. As you heard, she's got a lot of experience to help us with this process. So, we have a couple of goals for this meeting today, and they are to engage you, to inform you, and to hopefully get you excited about our comprehensive planning process. This is something that's never been done in the village before. You may recall that in the mid-90s, there was a land review process that ended up in some changes to our zoning that prescribed 5-acre minimum per parcel. And while this comprehensive plan will consider land use, it's really much broader than that. We're interested in soliciting opinions from our residents and from outside the village about what it's like to live here now and what do you perceive for the future. So the topics could include a wide variety, from housing stock to the services and amenities that the village provides, school performance, the downtown neighborhood, safety, conservation, taxes, telecommunication, and more. It's your imagination, and it's only limited by our village's perspective. So this is really a big deal for the village, and it's going to take some time. We're anticipating that it's going to run the course of this year before there'll be final recommendations made to the village and the mayor, and even village council and mayor. And even after that, the mayor and the council will take some time, reviewing the recommendations and prioritizing them. So again, this is a kind of a long range planning. We want to go at it deliberately, efficiently, but also very carefully. So I would say that even though we contracted with Chris and CT Consultants back in the fall of 19, we never really got started until October of 20, mainly because of COVID and restrictions about getting together. And we finally decided we had to overcome that and use Zoom and other methods that we don't think are as preferable, but we wanted to get started. So since late October, November, Chip and the mayor and I have talked with over 100 villagers who have expressed an interest in volunteering or who were recommended to volunteer. And over the course of those interviews, we learned about their interests, their availability, and their willingness to commit the time to serve on the advisory committee or one of the teams. So just a word about Chip and myself as project coordinators. Our role is to monitor the progress of the comprehensive plan under the direction of Chris Hopkins. So our goal is to make sure that it's moving forward. I want to make sure to note that our involvement is strictly coordination. Our personal opinions are not relevant to our work with the comprehensive plan. We're committed to a fair and open process. I will tell you that we're going to probe and challenge all of the groups to do their best, and you can count on that. And if you know Chip, you already know that's the case, and as you get to know me, that's going to be the case as well. We want to have all of us be very proud of this outcome. So how's it going to work? It's organized through the advisory committee and 3 teams. The advisory committee is going to be made up of about 25 individuals who represent the diversity of the village: age, gender, cultural background, family size, as well as professional backgrounds, their personal interests, how long they've been in the village, and again, their availability to commit to monthly meetings starting in April. So this group is really going to be receiving information from the community surveys, from your work getting outside perspectives, and from formal interviews that are going to go on with some special figures in the village. They're going to be discussing these inputs and writing up periodic reports to share with the villagers to in turn get their feedback. There's also going to be 3 teams, and the first team is you, outside perspectives, another is PR and communications, and the third is neighborhood co-captains. Each of them have different responsibilities. You're going to be gathering information from outside the village to help us look at ourselves from a broader context. And in a minute, Chip's going to go into a little bit more detail. PR and communications has a critical role in keeping the village residents apprised of the progress of the plan, and also highlighting the issues that are emerging for consideration. They'll be asking for comments. They'll create graphs, charts, and kind of a logo or brand for the comprehensive plan. So when you go to the website, or you go to the Pink Sheet, or Gates Mills Connection, or social media, you'll be able to identify the comprehensive plan easily and have some updates. So they're a key group for, again, keeping our people apprised. They'll be attending meetings, perhaps meetings of yours, the advisory committee, and kind of reporting on them. The neighborhood co-captains is the third group, and they're really the glue, I think, in this process. Their responsibility is to gather feedback from our residents, and these co-captains are going to be responsible for neighborhoods. So we need a lot of co-captains who are going to host teas or coffees or meetings at the community house to really have a chance one-on-one to get, or group on one, to really have a good sense of how people are wrestling with some of the issues that are emerging. So this group, their work will begin in the spring, as opposed to yours, which is really going to begin now, and they'll be fully engaged by the spring and summer. So these are all the keys to the success of the comprehensive plan, and I hope you can hear from my enthusiasm and the diversity of these teams and advisory committees, that we have a lot of people committed and involved in this. And I guess for me personally, no matter what the outcome is, the fact that we're bringing people together to discuss these issues in the open and to have dialogue, we're all going to learn a lot with Chris's leadership about how to discuss difficult issues, express our opinions respectfully, resolve differences, and care for one another. One of the last things that I want to mention, I mentioned key individuals. We have so many individuals in this community who have been mayors, who have led community organizations, who are third generation in the village, who helped to found, have roots going back to the founding of this village. And we want to make sure that we have interviews from them where we can capture their perspective on what's made this village what it is into today. So those factors will be very important as we debate what we want to keep and what really needs to change. Finally, we'll have a couple of public forums where people from the whole village will be able to get together, and with material graphed and looking at maps and the responses from these key interviews and the surveys, we'll really have an opportunity to grapple. And again, we've got Chris to make sure that these kind of meetings are productive. So again, that's kind of the overview of the comprehensive plan. I've hopefully taken you from January to December. And I'm ready to turn it over to Chip, but if anybody has any questions of me before I do that, I will try to answer them. Okay, I'm gonna take that I was clear as mud.
All right, Sandra, I'll pick up from there. So as she said, the overall comprehensive plan process is very involved with villagers, lots of interviews. A subset that wasn't mentioned is a very detailed community survey that Chris Hopkins will send out to every resident. There'll be a lot of publicity and encouragement for everybody to respond. Chris's experience in other communities is that we will get a lot of responses. Again, all these interviews, public forums, neighborhood groups. So throughout the year, we're going to get a lot of feedback from within our village. Chris Hopkins' team is going to supplement that with some data and things from, that they're going to collect. But the thing that's missing, and I think everybody on this call can relate, that by and large, everybody has been, as a councilman for 6 years, I can attest to this, people are very satisfied with most aspects of the village and don't want to see change. But everybody has one little thing here or there that they'd like to change. But just as long as you only change that, I want everything else to stay the same. And I don't know if we're atypical or that's consistent with most communities, but I think one little fact that we're going to discover in this overall process is how long the average resident stays in their home. And my guess is we're going to be way above any kind of national average as to our average turnover of people in a home. So people move here and they're very comfortable. Obviously, we all love the culture and our beautiful Chagrin Valley. And so trying to get change is, if it is needed, is going to be a task. And I've talked with more than a few of you about this, but this is a 10-year process. And I want you to be aware, we have 1,000 residents or houses in this, or addresses in this village, actually 997. If we turned over houses every 20 years, then over the next 10, which is probably about closer to our average, then we're going to have 500 new residents coming into this village, looking to move into this village, many more than that, looking at the possibility of moving in over the next 10 years. And so we need to be very aware of what does the outside world think of Gates Mills, and what do we need to be aware of? What's good, what's really precious, what are reasons that people do move here, but then also what are the impediments of why people choose not to move here, and what all the people outside think of that. So the objective overall of the outside perspectives is to gather data that leads to insights about the current and future opportunities and challenges facing the village from an outsider's perspective. So this committee, we are snoops. We are trying to go outside the four walls of the village and see what we can find that we think will be important to factor into the thinking of the village and hopefully provide some more ammunition for why perhaps some change may be needed, even though on balance, it's not a change we really relish wanting to think about. So I like the phrase, what are we missing if we just look in the mirror? And I am going through an outline. We sent this out to everybody. I'm not sure if you have it in front of you, but okay, so how are we going to do this? And I'll cover this very quickly, and then we'll get to the heart of this meeting. One we're going to do is some guided interviews, and we're going to start out with interviews with realtors. And we'll get very focused on this in a moment with Chuck Speer and Lindsey Steinbrink, who are going to spearhead all the day-to-day working, facilitate all the day-to-day working of this committee. We hope and we think that we're going to come up with as many as 30 realtors, approach them, make sure they're willing to do an interview. We'll have an interview guide and hopefully get insights from them as to what they see as the good and the bad and the challenges of the village. Maybe we can reach out to some relocation departments of companies. When you think about it, there are a lot of large companies that relocate executives and presumably beyond that into our, into Northeast Ohio. And we think they may have some perspective on what they think and what they hear from people as they bring them into town and consider Gates Mills versus other communities. And this committee will hopefully brainstorm about, we ought to talk to this group or this person or that's going to have a good perspective on Gates Mills versus other communities. Chris Hopkins' group will publish some very good data, but it's very likely that we're going to want to supplement that. I personally have a belief that we ought to understand what's really happening to our housing values relative to other communities. Not sure if we can dig into that data deep enough, but I know we're all very enthusiastic in this village right now over the last year of how quickly houses are selling and obviously the overall strength of the housing market. I can tell you personally, and I know David Malone's on the call, so he may even supplement that comment at some point, but from people I talk to outside the village, houses in Chagrin Falls in many cases are not only selling fast, but they're getting 4 and 5 bids over asking. I don't know how often that's actually happening in our village. So while we're enjoying a strong housing market, maybe still not quite as strong as maybe some of the other communities. And I think it could be helpful to at least understand that. That may be something we dig into, maybe we can't.
Can I interrupt you for just a moment?
Sure, absolutely, David.
This is David Malone. To that end right there, many houses that I've personally sold this year have gone into multiples, sold first day on market, well over asking. So property values and home values are on the rise in Gates Mills and have been.
Good. Well, there you go. So, so maybe we are keeping pace. Maybe we're doing even better, but it might be beneficial to really try to nail that down. Schools are very, very important. Scott Snyder couldn't join us tonight. He's on this committee. He's the CFO of the Mayfield Schools and very enthused about being part of this committee. And I think he could help there and just further document what's the real performance of the schools. And maybe it turns out that it's the performance is better than many people think, but maybe it needs to be publicized better, or maybe we can even be helpful to the Mayfield schools on what maybe some of the challenges are. Tax comparisons. So those could be some possible data analyses. We're going to kind of wait to get the lead on that from Chris Hopkins as she pulls her information together. And the third area might be research projects. An example could be, we know that with this last 2 years of COVID, that more people are working from home. So what is the likelihood? What are companies, what's the future of that? Are people now going to head back to where everybody's going to go back to a normal work pattern in offices, or is it likely to be more work at home? And how much of a trend is that likely to be? Perhaps telecommunications. I can't imagine what the world's going to look like 10 years from now. But what are communities doing? What's really happening telecommunication wise? And is that something that Gates Mills needs to think about over the next 10 years to really make sure we offer that amenity if that's what it needs to be competitive? So that's the broad scope. These things will arise, but we want to turn to more specific. Well, we want to go through the team here. Chris and I'll introduce Lindsey Steinbrink and Chuck Speer. And we'll quickly talk about you guys as a team, some of the skill sets, and then get a sense from each of you what you're willing to participate in. We've formed a very large committee so that the work can be spread out, so that we're not overburdening any one member. For example, want to get started on realtor interviews, and we think that teams of 2 would be beneficial. There'll be an interview guide. Maybe the interview's 10 or 15 minutes by Zoom, presumably in many cases. But 3 to 5 interviews per team. We hope that's not too much of a workload as an example. So that's a background. Before we turn it over, I'll do as Sandra did. Do you have questions about the scope of this meeting? By the way, let me add one more thing. We envision that most of the work of this committee will take place between now and April. We would encourage anybody and everybody on this committee as the process unfolds the rest of the year that you track it. It's possible we may convene the committee later if something's come up and we'd like to dig in on something further. But just even if the work of this committee winds up in by April, maybe, I don't know if it'll go into May, but I would encourage all of you to track what's going on, and there will obviously be lots of opportunity for further input. But I think we can be the very important input and help guide what the advisory committee works on. So with that, turn it over. Chris, do you want to spearhead this next section?
Well,
Yep.
sure, I'll,
Yep. I have a question.
Sorry. Yes,
I
Nancy.
noticed that you did not include transportation in the list. Is that something you think might be useful in terms of how we relate to new residents, what transportation we offer, or transportation might be needed for the future?
Well, you raise an excellent point, Nancy. As always, we actually shortened the words in this outline today just to try to give it a summary. And I took the word, one of us took the word transportation off. It was on our list. We just didn't want to spend too much time on the research projects at this point because they're still in the being formed. But yes, transportation is very much could be something that we want to understand more. So
I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the kind of people that want to move here, whether there's transportation available, how we deal with seniors. I just think it is an issue. So I think it's something that should be overlooked. I also think that while housing values are doing well right now, I thought, Chip, you mentioned the other day when I spoke to you that while housing is hot right now, as David said, and that many are selling for more than asking, some are selling for less, and we ought to compare that to other communities as to whether they're selling a lot more or a lot less than other communities. Like, are our housing values appreciating 3%, where other communities are appreciating 20%? So I don't think we should just say, well, things are hot now, so things must be good.
yeah, agreed. I think there might be more. That's why it may take more in-depth on the analysis. David, I saw your box light up there. Did you want to add a comment? I guess not. Okay.
Yeah, and Nancy, there is a lot of data, and I think already Chuck Speer has already done some research into that. We've got David Malone who's going to be helping us, and I think Chris has a lot of that kind of data too. So
Great.
you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was about to turn it over to Chris, but I did want to introduce Chuck Speer and Lindsey Steinbrink. You see them there towards, at least on my screen, towards the bottom. They're both waving. And they're going to be the day-to-day facilitators of this committee. So those two and Chris will take it from here to go into more depth at this point.
So I'll just start by reiterating that we do have the list of all the team members and it was attached to the agenda, which I emailed out earlier this morning. So did everyone receive that email from me this morning?
Yes.
Okay. And then also as part of that, I sent out a link to a survey, and the survey was to get a general idea of, what sort of expertise do all of you bring to the table to assist in all of the research that we may be faced with, and that, as Chip pointed out, it could be very broad. The other part of, or other reason for doing the survey was to also ask you about, how long you've lived in the village, and then what's the best way to contact you in the event that there's a meeting scheduled and then at the last minute it needs to be canceled. So we got, I think all but two or three people had not answered the survey. So I would just, if you have an issue with it or some other reason why, let me know, and we can do it a different way if that makes sense, or what. But with that, I'll turn it over then to Chuck and Lindsey.
Lindsey, you want me to start? You want to start? I'll start. My name is Chuck Speer. I'm very new to the community. I've been here a year. I came in from Los Angeles. I was born here in Cleveland, spent 25 years here, and I've been away more than 50. I tell my friends that I know the mayor of Gates Mills, and I know the police chief. And I tell them that Larry Frankel, when he was on the council, stopped by my house to say hello. David Atten, you probably don't remember, but I was walking into Sarah's place when you were there with your petition. I signed it.
I do remember.
You could be a candidate. It's really quite amazing the opportunity that is provided here for people to help the community, participate in the community. And you want excitement? I'm so excited about having a role to play, small as it is, in what we're going to be doing here. It's really phenomenal. So I've got a track I want to run on because there's some things I want to make sure I cover. Lindsey and I are the co-facilitators of this committee, and what that means is facilitate. We're here to make this as easy as possible. We're going to try and take all your input, put it together so that what you have to do is a manageable task. The Outside Perspectives Committee, we're not going to get anything controversial here. That might come somewhere else along the line, but we're collecting data on how we are perceived. And we think the best way to start is to go to the real estate agents who work in this area. So we're going to start out, we have a database of 200 and some transactions that have closed in the last year or so in Gates Mills, in Hunting Valley, in Chagrin Falls. And the Chagrin Falls is an expanded area that goes to Canyon Lakes and the Canyon school system, et cetera. And that database identifies the seller's agent, the buyer's agent, the square footage, the price, the agency these people work for, so that we have been able to sort that. And we've come up with 29 agents who have done more than 3 transactions. Astoundingly, the list was 200 and some agents, but we came up with a list of 29 who have done 3 or more transactions in the area. Here in Gates Mills, that list is constructed of about half of the actual transactions, because the other half are all David Malone, and to a lesser degree, Adam Kaufman. But we can come up with people that we clearly know are working in this area. We can start with that list. But that's really not the only way we should do it, because all of you probably have some connection here or there in the real estate business and know people who could help us in this process. So we're going to ask you to help notify us of that. Maybe someone worked here for years and retired. They're going to have some inputs that we're going to be interested in. So that's step one, is get you the list of the agents we've identified. Take a look. We'll get that to you tomorrow. Take a look, see if there are people you think should be added. Give us those names. We're hoping we can get people who can do groups of 2 that can do 4 of these interviews to gather this information. Lindsey, what about you?
Take
Where'd you
myself
go?
off mute, sorry. Just to build on what you said, Chuck, I think that's exactly what we need to do, is if develop the list, we'll send the list out. If you have business or personal relationships with any of the realtors on that list, it'd be really useful for us to know, because Chuck and I are going to build the teams being the interview teams, off that list. And if someone has a personal relationship, that's obviously a great place to start to actually secure the interview. The second piece of what we're looking to accomplish is also letting us know about the relationship with a realtor, if you have one, and then developing some sample questions. What Chris has told us is she wants something quantitative that we can use. So, multiple choice questions, scale of 1 to 10, true or false. So for instance, when you looked at Gates Mills, what did you think of the Mayfield City Schools? Is that important? Yes or no? Just, do you feel the taxes are high in Gates Mills? Yes or no? Or we could do a scale of their high, low, average. So we're just looking to put something so she can chunk all that data and make sense of it for us at a future date. So Chuck, what else would you add to that?
I think that's where we need to be. It's a beginning effort to put together the list of questions. So we need some help with that.
Yeah. Well, and if I can just add one other comment about the survey, or the interviews that we're hoping to accomplish. I would say it's a mix of quantitative data that we're gathering, but then we're also having this interview discussion sort of thing to get more nuanced on some of the things that you can't quite quantify on a scale or something like that. So the interviews will be a combination of concrete, filling out a checklist sort of thing, or an actual survey questionnaire, but also, taking down notes and asking for some of these other broader questions as well.
Right. So what we're looking to do is get the realtors' names that get some questions from you. Then we're going to go through, Chuck and I are going to go through all the questions and the realtors, assign the teams, and get a script of all those questions. And then we'd like to test that script on David Malone and see how it goes, see what what questions, to your point, Chris, develop into a bigger topic or roll into a new subject. And it's a broader or wider answer other than a true or false or yes or no. And then we'll more or less proofread or outline the questions that we feel were the most productive, the most useful, and then we'll send that out to all of you for your interviews to use as a script to work off of. So the dates and the timeline of what we're looking to do this all in is more detailed out in this outline. Do you guys have any questions, or is there?
Let me add one more thing, Lindsey. As we were preparing for this meeting, Sandra Turner said, we want to make sure people know we're not looking for platitudes about our village, but really we're looking for honest feedback about how we perceive. That's the exciting part of this task, to learn the unknown. So we're not fishing for compliments here.
Right.
We're looking for the hard truth. Now, the interview process is not the full range of the activities that this outside perspectives committee will do. There's going to be more to do later. We're going to look at real estate trends, lifestyle trends, school performance comparisons, tax comparisons, and because we value feedback, we're going to be looking at transportation. But for now, our focus is on these interviews.
I have a quick question. In addition to interviewing real estate agents, I see that you mentioned a couple other people. Are they being interviewed together in this batch, or are other people going to be interviewed at a later time?
Well, see how this batch goes, I think, but we certainly do want to look around and see if there are relocation people in companies in the area who are bringing people in, and we want to get those perceptions.
Okay.
I would love to know what the people who have moved. It looks like there were 65 transactions in the past 12 months here. There's 65 new people in these homes. They have a pretty good idea of what it was like to look and why they came here. And there are people that means 65 people have left. I would like to know what's going on with them. So
yeah, and I was going to
after this.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention that perhaps it may not be that helpful compared to real estate agents, but maybe builders. I know there's 4 or 5 builders that seem to be responsible for most of not only the new construction in Gates Mills, but the renovations. And although they're working for people who have already decided to stay here, so perhaps it's not the target audience, but they might have some insights to share. Because I noticed that there's like generally like 4 or 5 different companies, I think, that are handling most of the stuff in Gates Mills, that are higher end, renovations and such. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, this is Kendra. That was going to be my suggestion as well. I mean, we can go through the realtors first, but I think we should talk to some of the real estate developers and builders as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I love that idea. Russ Berzon, you've been I'm sorry, can I? Yeah. Russ, do you want to comment on your thoughts? Because you've done some development work over your career.
Yeah, I've been doing that sort of work for 45 years. And I'm a resident of Gates Mills now for 21 years, having built my home on Andrews back then. And I think interviewing builders and developers is a logical next step once we've paired through the list of brokers and realtors, because updating housing stock is one of the components of keeping a vibrant village. And that's what builders and remodeling firms can do for us. So I think it's an outstanding source of information that can be bundled together with all the other components that we're talking about. And I'm very well versed in many of the builders, that serve our community. I know most of them personally, and be happy to focus there beyond interviewing several of the real estate folks that I'm sure are on your list that I know. So certainly a great opportunity to gather good information.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
We wanted to get a sense, I don't know, we're not quite sure how to do this. We could almost do a roll call, but Lindsey and Chuck need to know after this meeting who's willing to sign up to do some interviews, and then they'll take it from there and getting things further organized. So I don't know quite. What do you think, Chris? Should we do a roll call, or? I don't want to put anybody on the spot, because you don't have to, because there's other work that you can do if you're not comfortable with this, or you don't feel. We want the interviews in the next 2 or 3 to 4 weeks. So if you're going to take a trip to Antarctica, it might not be a very good time to sign up for it. So
Well, I think Lindsay had the idea of asking people to respond via email. Is that right, Lindsay? Was that your recommendation?
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Good.
I think let's give people, I mean, this is a lot of material to digest. Everybody, we're pretty familiar with this, but let's let them look through this and see where their interest is. And then if you can just email Chuck and I, if you'd like to do the realtor interviews, I think I just wrote all three of your names down for the builders. We can have you do the builders. And Chuck and I we're planning on separating too. So like Chuck could work with someone, I'll work with someone, and we'll do interviews as well. Because I'm sure Warren Morris is dying to work with me. So we'll, and it doesn't have to, I mean, if you do 3 interviews, you do 3. If we'll sort it out, the number, but we just want to get the ball rolling.
And I guess just reinforcing what Lindsay is saying, the information that we're gathering, both from within the village and outside perspectives, is what's going to roll up to the first advisory committee meeting in April. So it's very important that we, that we get these interviews conducted, because they're going to open the door to more research or data collection. And again, we want that first meeting with the advisory committee to have as much, information as possible. The other comment I wanted to make is I'm so delighted at the team that we have facilitating this. Lindsay and Chuck, they've just been a delight to work with. And what's so ironic about the two of them is that Lindsay in her youth has many more years in the village, I think over 20. And Chuck, more on the senior side, is within the last year. So even in terms of diversity in different parts of the village, et cetera, they make quite a team. So I'm looking forward to working with them.
Let me add one further comment. After we've gotten through the interviews, we're going to reconvene this committee overall and review what we found. With Chris, we'll pull together some of the quantitative responses. 28 of the 29 realtors said this on this topic. We'll try to assimilate the nuances, and then we're going to task this committee to pull together what are the summary points that we want to make sure are heard, both with Chris, obviously, and with the advisory committee, on what the outside realtor world is saying. That, we really think these are some of the major strengths that come through. These are the things that this village needs to really consider, et cetera. So it's, I think, going to be very interesting as this committee starts to wrestle with what we're hearing. What do we think it means, and how do we want to project that or communicate that back to the advisory committee? So
before Chip, before we close this evening, and I'd like to just, invite a couple of you to come off mute and just kind of give us your perspective on what you've heard so far. Does it make sense to you? What are we missing? If you want to state what you're interested in working on, I'd just be curious to kind of hear a couple of your voices.
This is Chris Howard. Chip recruited me and gave me some idea of what this was about. And I guess my question would be, what's the next step? I mean, I'd like to do some of the interviews. I'd like to see the list so I could be part of it. And I guess I'd be paired with somebody. So we need to schedule those. So what's the next step actually for getting that done?
Lindsay or Chuck?
We'll put together a draft of some of the questions that interest us and ask you to augment them or tell us which ones shouldn't be asked. We'll get that out to you tomorrow. We'll get out a list of the agents we've identified that we think will be useful. So you can look at that. Tell us if you would like to be interviewing specific people on that list. Add anybody else you think we should be interviewing. If you think our database is inadequate in its coverage and that there are other agents we can surface that are working in communities that relate to ours, we'd like to know that too. But we will get you something by email tomorrow that you'll be able to take a look at. And then from that, we'll gather interest in who's ready to do these interviews, and we'll put the teams together.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more comment. I know that I understand your interest in interviewing people that do sell in Gates Mills, but I think you might be missing a component of people who don't sell in Gates Mills and why. And I just think that's something to think about, because there are realtors who don't sell in Gates Mills and who steer their clients away from us. And we might be missing some valuable people that want to be in a community like ours, but their agents say, oh, you don't want to live there. So I really want to be careful we're not navel gazing with, these are the people who sell here, they're doing a great job, Dave's doing well. But you know, we've had other people do well and then not be around. So I just think we have to be skeptical. I don't, and I think we should include some other groups in the community, including other nonprofits that do work in the community that have perceptions about the community that just aren't about who wants to live here, but how they feel we relate to the rest of Greater Cleveland, and you know, which is a very important hub for us. Without the success of Greater Cleveland, we are nothing, because we won't have any people who can afford to live in our community. That's just a thought.
No, great
Let
points.
me respond to the first part. The 29 agents that we identified as being active with 3 or more transactions, of that number, 12 had no transactions in Gates Mills. They're Hunting Valley, Chagrin Falls, but no transactions. And so we can look at those. The Chagrin Falls area has a lot of transactions that are below the lowest level in our community, but we can sort through that list. And if we want to augment the list, we'll go to the Chagrin Falls agents that are working in this price market and are not working here, and we'll include them.
And one of the key things we talked about and why we wanted to do these realtor interviews was to figure out and hear from people who may look at houses in Gates Mills and choose not to buy in Gates Mills. So one of the hopes is to understand why Gates Mills isn't attracting certain people, and if we can pinpoint who those, you know, what types of people choose not to. And it might be, you know, is it related to the housing stock, the variety, the size, et cetera, you know, so and that's the kind of information that you can really only get by doing these sorts of interviews.
Mhm.
Yeah, to build on Chris, I mean, oh, go ahead.
Hi, David Hooker. Just to add to Nancy's point, I think, Chuck, we could broaden the number of communities you're thinking about. I mean, beyond Hunting Valley and Chagrin Falls. I mean, if you think about it, people who are moving to Cleveland and they're shown houses on the east side, they go to Shaker, Cleveland Heights, Beechwood, and they work their way out. And realtors are right smack dab in the middle of those discussions about the pluses and minuses of all those places. So when you send the list, I've got somebody that, you know, has been doing that for a long time. She may not be on the Gates Mills list, you know, transactions or east side, but I'm going to give her name to you because I think people like that would be helpful.
Great.
Yeah, I'm uncertain about this. I built a database, and I'm uncertain about the communities that I selected because I left here 50 years ago, and they were the communities I loved when I left. And there are new communities that are attracting people. So yeah, any suggestion you have about increasing the range of the people we want to talk to, it's not a lot of trouble. There's a tremendous amount of information on Zillow. Give me another community, I'll plug it all in.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too that Chip had mentioned earlier was the fact that we may find in talking with the first group of realtors that there are additional things to be asking or additional people to be talking to. And I think to the point of who are the peer communities that we would compare Gates Mills to. So I think one of the key things to keep in mind with this committee is that, as I said before, we're learning as we go along. So if all of your ideas are very valuable and contribute to the work of the committee and really trying to drill down into figuring out what makes Gates Mills an attractive place and what can be, I think Chip went over these, what sort of things can be tweaked or changed or somehow adjusted to really improve Gates Mills to be attractive even more to the greater population.
Andrea, if I can throw my 2 cents in. Yes. You ask about the overall scope of the meeting, et cetera. I think the organization you've put together and the structure of it is excellent. Everybody seems certainly committed, and Chuck and Lindsey certainly have taken on a load, but they certainly are up for the task. A few things that hit me that some of the last suggestions, I think we all have the capacity to do more than a few interviews. And the more information that we can pull together quicker, the more effective this is going to be. When you mentioned interviewing the 60 new residents that have moved here, it would be great to find out, what were the determining factors that brought them here. I think who are the 60 people or whatever the number is that moved away, what took them out of the village? If it's some factors that will affect our decision making, that would be great to get that kind of input also. So I think this is a very evolving process, and we're going to keep learning every time we look at it. So anyhow, that's what I have to add.
Okay, good, thank you.
If I can say something real quick, this is David Malone, and I have met with thousands of people looking in Gates Mills in the last few years. And, the gamut is huge. Why buy, why not buy here? I mean, I love it here. So I'm always selling Gates Mills. And so to the last caller's point, talking to those folks, what determined, why did they want to be here? I mean, when I've showed 6 times the last 2 days in Gates Mills, different homes. And in doing that, you have people that are coming back that are young families wanting to come back to Gates Mills because this is the life that they knew, and they believe in, raising their kids in the same environment. You have relocation, you have Lubrizol, you have Progressive, you have the hospital systems that we have that are relocating people here that want this kind of community. You have people that want to come out of Cleveland Heights and Shaker Heights where you're living real close proximity to one another, and particularly want to move out and have more elbow room. You have, with the COVID thing, people needing bigger houses and bigger spaces where they don't feel more exposed, to being contacted with things. There are all kinds of numbers of reasons people relocating here from Seattle, Chicago, New York, Houston, wherever. They're wanting to come here because of the value that you get here based upon where they're coming from. So we have a tremendous, a great lifestyle, and but there are some things that we do need to work on that are, I would say, challenges and hurdles in selling the community to potential buyers. And just off the top of my head, taxes are one, septic systems are another, school systems are another. The other thing is I've heard it mentioned several times is, and I see a revitalization in Gates Mills actually as we're turning over from one generation to another with new families coming in and renovating homes and making them more appealing and those types of things. So I think that is a very attractive thing is the fact that I'm seeing homes being improved upon instead of let to deteriorate. Okay. And so it's turning over to a new demographic. And but I appreciate the opportunity to be, involved with this. It's something, of course, I'm passionate about, as I do love it here, and I want us to all be living in a great community, right? So, but again, that's my spiel on that.
Great. And that's a perfect example of, in one sense, we just had a mini realtor interview, and certainly to get some of those kinds of factors, and then also, pull in those that looked and didn't find the right thing. So, but David's going to be very helpful in both, giving us the real world, helping us to get that questionnaire to have the right kind of questions and tones. And as we get feedback, I think we're going to learn from David what we're hearing from other realtors. He'll add some color to what we may think they're saying or not saying. So very delighted that David's willing to participate in this.
Okay,
May I-
hopefully everybody, it's as clear as mud, as Sandra says, of what we're asking as far as the next step after this is to go through the list of the realtors, see if you know anyone, if you'd want to run point on, doing an interview with them. Then Chuck and I will assign the teams. We're going to develop the script based on some of our questions we've already put together and whatever feedback you can give to us as far as questions that you think would be valuable to ask to the realtors. Then Chuck and I are going to do the interview with David and just kind of test it out, the questions that we pull together. And then we'd like to ideally reconvene this group and go through all the questions, go through the interview and say, well, this is, this question prompted to go in this direction, of a conversation, and give you a real solid ground of what you need to go out and, base your conversations off of. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions or?
And the only thing I would add, Lindsay, is when you say we'll gather this group together, I think you're talking about gathering the group of folks that are willing to do interviews. And if it's all of these folks, that's great. But we'll pull together the people who are doing the interviews, so you've got kind of a run through in terms of the questionnaire.
Yes.
Right, and the timing on that we're thinking is January 27th. Well, obviously, Lindsay and Chuck will nail that down, but that's roughly 2 weeks from now. So, Chris, back to your point, it's preparation over the next 2 weeks, and then following on or about the 27th, a meeting so that everybody has had a chance to review the questionnaire, is comfortable with it. You know who the realtors are. You have the contact information. Then after that meeting, you and if it's a team of two, you'll compare calendars and then now remember that we're going to first have to go out to the realtor and ask if they're willing to be interviewed. We've gotten immediate feedback that a realtor may say, well, I'm pretty busy, but I'll tell you what, I have 5 minutes right now. How about if we do it right now? So we're going to need to be prepared at that moment. It's one thing to schedule and say, great, we can have a Zoom call a week from tomorrow. It's another thing to say, I got time right now. How about if we do it right now? So we're going to have to be, each team will have to be prepared for that. And you may do an interview or two and then say, gee, I need some feedback. I'm not quite sure. And that's Lindsay and Chuck can help guide you on that. But so the main thing right now from this meeting is respond to the list of realtors that Chuck's going to send out. Start thinking about questions, range of questions. We'll get them set up in the right structure, Lindsay and Chuck and Chris, and then we'll test them out, and then and keep working on the list of realtors. And then 2 weeks from now, hopefully everybody will be ready, have a final meeting to review it, and be off to the races over that following 2 weeks. And that's why we're thinking maybe this entire committee reconvenes on or about February 17th. That's a Thursday. If you tentatively put it on your calendar for maybe 6 p.m. again, maybe we can even meet in person. Who knows where we will be in the COVID world and travel world, but and hopefully have been able to pull together all of the realtor feedback and digest and talk about that, and then talk about other steps. In the meantime, it's possible that some analyses might come up as Chris is off working on that. So we may be sending out other emails to say, gee, here's some analyses, who might want to roll up their sleeves and help dig in on this or that. So I don't know, Chris, I've just given everybody a better sense of immediate next steps.
If I could, I'd like to say good evening to everybody, and I'm glad to be here. I'm a fairly new resident, last 3 years. I lived in Hudson for the last 30 years before that. I was involved in the merger, then comprehensive, and then the 2 5-year reviews of the comprehensive plan in Hudson. And I came to Gates Mills because of what I liked here, and I'd like to see it preserved. In terms of the concept of what we do, I would like to think that we would have a model of the comprehensive plan in terms of concept before us as we go forward with this. When we're doing these interviews and talking to people, we should have some end goal of what the structure is, even if, because ultimately it's going to become legislation or rulemaking or something that the council and the committees of the council are going to adopt. So just in the broader sense, to know exactly what we're talking about, I just wonder if there's, I was looking online earlier to see if there's an existing comprehensive plan. If there is, I couldn't find it.
Never done one.
No,
Never done one.
this is something new.
It was a long process with Hudson, I'll just say. And a lot of things that got into it became, let's just say, bracelets that held us from doing things in the future. Good and bad, but you know, you got to be careful about what you commit to in a comprehensive plan. I'll just say that. A community cannot be all things to all people. You have to know what you are, what you want to be before you go to other people. That's just me. But I'm looking forward to working with you. I'm the guy that's going to be gone for the next 2 weeks fishing in Mexico. So if there's any interviews I can help with, they'll be after that.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Good.
Thanks, Bill. You know, I in closing, and I see that it's about 10 after. I think we've had a great discussion, and we've thrown a lot of information at you from a very concrete perspective. Just look for the emails that are going to come next from Lindsey and Chuck about next steps, and you know we'll keep you informed about dates of next meetings and timelines, etc. But again, we really appreciate all of your participation tonight and commitment, and look forward to having a very successful year working on these things together. So with that, I'll just sign off for us, and you know, look forward to the next steps. And I guess for the 5 of us, Chip, you and Lindsey, Chuck, I don't know, maybe Chris, we probably ought to just have a debrief tomorrow and make sure we're on track for following up with the things we said we would do. But, you know, have a good evening, everyone, and enjoy your trips wherever you might be going, and including Mexico.
Or already are. Many have joined from remote locations, which is nice. So,
Yeah.
so.
Thank
At
you.
least nobody was sitting on a beach with the waves in their background, luckily. So,
Thank you all.
Adios.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.